In God's, oops, do you think God's GPS is working in your life? What if you took a detour? It's amazing to me, God's GPS. Instead of global positioning system, I call it grace positioning system. Because God has the amazing ability that if you have taken a detour, the moment that you turn to Him and say, I really want to follow you, you hear this word, recalculating, recalculating, and God has the ability to make all things work for the good of those who love Him, even the detours you have made in your life. You know who are the best counselors? Bring the sound just down a bit for me. Bring it down a bit. You know who are the best counselors for Alcoholic Anonymous and Narcotic Anonymous and Narcotic Anonymous? You know who? Those who at some point have been and now they have found a different way and now they can help others. The best counselors for divorce are those who were divorced at one point and now God helped them through it. That's why God uses wounded healers. He uses those who have been wounded and now offer healing from their. He doesn't waste any, not even your deepness. So I love the fact that God has a GPS that recalculates and recalculates and gives purpose to our lives, even if we went through difficult things. So tonight we're starting to put it all together. We're going to end up in Revelation, but we're not going to use your booklet tonight. But we're going to use your paper and pen that I asked you to bring some notes and your Bible. Tomorrow morning, bring your Revelation booklet so we can finish saying something all together from the book. But also bring to take notes. We're going to see another story that is very known, but we're going to see it in a new way. Tonight we're going to talk about, okay, once you understand the gospel and you know you've been set free and you know that you've been saved and you have a woohoo in your heart and you have a Jesus wins in your soul, then what? Then what happens? A lot of people are very confused between the way they're saved and their calling. And so we're going to first of all make a difference between the way you're saved and the way you're called. All the people that know they have been saved will have a calling and a purpose in their lives. All. Every one of you. And let me tell you something. Today, Pastor Jason and his family took me to that lake very close to here. There's a beautiful lake. What is the name of the lake? Sun Moon? Sun and Moon? Okay. Sun Moon Lake. And for the first time in my life, I entered a temple that is in front of it. I don't even know, is it a, do we call it a Hindu temple? Because they were a mixture. Yeah, because it was a mixture of, it was a Buddhist, and then they had all the gods that were from, um, what is it? Taoist, and they have many different gods. But let me tell you, I was so struck by the angry faces of the Buddhist gods, and the people that were coming to appease them. And I said, how different our message is that we have a God who sacrificed himself so that he could be at peace with us. And it's the opposite message. And I was struck by this. I know, and it brings tears to my eyes, that there will be somebody in heaven because who lives in this place. I became convinced of this. Because who's going to tell these people that there is a different God? One that is not angry or has a red face or is ready to punish them. God has placed you, whether you're a teacher or a student or a pastor or whoever you are, He has placed you here for this time because He has a purpose. And I was convinced of this, that God has purpose for each one of us. But today I was struck by the fact that if you were not here to talk about Jesus, who would? So it confirmed my message for tonight. And the first thing we're going to do is separate so that you know that your salvation doesn't come from your calling. God will do something in you powerfully and through you powerfully. That is not added to the merits of your salvation. The only thing that saves you is what He has done on the cross. Once you understand that, He will give you a fire, a purpose for His glory. And today we're going to study that purpose and how God guides us. Because all of us that get it, that get the gospel, start asking, so what should I do now? Where should I go next? You don't know how many of you came to talk to me this week and saying, pray for me because I want to know what to do next, or how to do it, or how to reach somebody, or maybe you're not a preacher but you cook. Okay, so how can with that I teach about Jesus? Maybe you're a doctor, maybe you're a dentist, maybe you're a teacher. I went to visit your school. Pastor Jason brought me there. All these little kids that know nothing about Jesus, you have them in your classroom. I was struck by how you've been chosen by God for such a time as this. And so Ephesians chapter 2 makes the difference and tells you that your calling comes out of your understanding of the gospel. So let's go to Ephesians 2 to start tonight. That's not the story we're going to do tonight. We're studying actually a biography of somebody tonight from the Bible. But I want to make sure that you understand why I have all this different clothing here in the front. Chapter 2, verse 8. By grace you have been saved. Okay, so how have you been saved? How do you understand this grace? Through faith. And how do you get this faith? And even the faith is not of yourself, it is a gift of God. So let's start from the beginning. You have been, I'm going to move this mic. If you don't mind bringing the mic so I don't the cable, I'm going to take it out. Just this one. Just this one. No, this one. I'm going to take it out of the cable here so that I don't trip on it. So, how are you saved? By grace. How do I understand that I've been saved by the robe of righteousness of Christ? I understand that by faith. Who gives me that faith? It's a gift from God. I cannot even produce the faith to grasp the grace. So Paul says, look, everything comes from God. So look at read 8 and 9. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. It's not as a result of works, so that no one may boast. You cannot do anything to add to your salvation. Nothing. Not as a result of works, so no one may boast. That's the gospel. Now, everybody that gets that has to read the next verse. For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared. When did He prepare these? Beforehand, so that we walk in them. So, why does it say that there's good works if you are not saved by works? It's because you have been saved, and now God is going to put this fire in your belly and fill you with purpose to do the things for which you were born. You were born with a purpose from your mother's womb. When God was putting you together in your mother's womb, whether you were planned by your mother or not planned by your mother, it doesn't matter because God planned you. And when He put you in your mother's womb, He already put in you all kinds of things for the purpose you would have on this earth. You know, I was born in Argentina. There are no women preachers in Argentina. And when I was 3 years old, I used to gather all my dolls and preach to them. And my mother used to make little houses for me because we moved a lot because my dad, was an evangelist. And so he used to make all these little houses for me. He used to say, put your dolls here and play with the dolls, like all the normal girls would do. And I would put the dolls there and wait till she left and sit them again and preach to them again. And you're saying, well, where does that come from? And so I spent 15 years in the business world because I didn't know God wanted me in the ministry. During that time, I volunteered as a pastor for free for 15 years because that was my passion. And so God put something inside of you. But you have to make sure you understand that you're only saved by what He has done. Once you understand that, He will not only give you a purpose, but empower you and give you abilities and give you spiritual gifts for you. So this evening, we're going to study how the gospel understanding will give you a calling. And so these things are your calling. And I think tonight's message will give answers to many of your questions that you've been asking me. Um, and it doesn't matter the age because many people do their calling later in life or some early in life. Some people, they had to raise kids and they had to do whatever to pay the bills and they get retired and woohoo, now they're doing their calling. I've seen people, Asmos, he started his calling at 80 years old. Sarah had the child of the promise at 90 years old. So obviously, God's clock and our clock and our watch are very different. So today we're going to talk about how God guides you and orchestrates your calling. And I know this is a very important topic and one that many of you are asking. What next? What next year? How about next 5 years? What is going to be? And I understand that because we all have gone through things that were like, okay, so now what? So I'm hoping to find something today. And that's why I asked you to bring something to write because I'm sure somebody. We're going to study the story of Joseph. So please go to Genesis chapter 37. We're going to study it. The difference between biblical studies and other types of studies is that biblical studies look for things that were put there in the text in purpose. Like if words were repeated, if patterns were repeated, we look for these because there's no coincidences in the Bible. So today we're going to learn something about Joseph that you probably have not heard before unless you actually tuned into one of our TV programs. What is so amazing about the story of Joseph and how God guided this young man to his calling is that there's two types of plot. You know that stories have a plot. They have a line. But Joseph's story has two lines. The first line will be given to you by the robes that he's wearing. And he's going to wear three different robes in his life. And there are three different stages that all of us will go through. Most people know this robe, the multicolor robe. But there's three robes in Joseph's life. But there's another plot, because even though the robe is what people see of Joseph, God is behind his life, orchestrating his calling. And he's going to send dreams. And every robe will have two dreams attached to it. Second robe, two dreams attached to it. Third robe, two dreams attached to it. So God is orchestrating his life, sending dreams and visions, even though people only see, and Joseph only sees his robe. But God is behind each robe because he's bringing Joseph to a place where he will fulfill his call. So we're going to study all three robes today because every one of us will go through these stages that Joseph went through. Now, the story of Joseph is a very important one because it's the longest biography of one person Pentateuch. In all the first five books of the Bible, it goes from Genesis 37 to Genesis 50. The story of Joseph is the most intrinsically and detailed biography that we have in all of the Pentateuch. And we're told details about his life and about these two ways God showed his will until Joseph came to be king. So let's start with Genesis 37 is the first. We're going to call this robe the robe of your calling. The robe of your calling. You have this from your mother's womb. You might not know what it is. Nobody maybe told you what it is, but you have been given this, whatever it is, from your mother's womb. Now, in the case of Joseph, it's a very functional robe because Israel or Jacob loved Joseph more than all his brothers. So he made a multicolor robe. If you think that God cannot use you because you have a dysfunctional family, um, let me tell you, we are all in great company because there's not one functional family in the Bible. There's not one. Not even Jesus' family was functional because they kept trying to talk him out of his calling. His mother, his brothers kept going to grab him and say, "You went crazy. You're crazy. Don't do this. Don't go against the Pharisees." So there's not one family in the whole Bible that is not functional. So get that out of your head that your family has to be all perfect for you God to use you. Because if not, you're going to wait for eternity. Because none of us are functional. You know why? Because we're human. I know that's some of, but we're human. So our families have dysfunction. So we have a very dysfunctional family, starting with Joseph. Genesis 37, verse 3 and 4. Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a vari-colored tunic or a vari-colored robe. Actually, the Hebrew says a richly ornamented robe. And his brothers, verse 4, saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, and they hated him. So not only was this dysfunctional because Jacob loved him more than the others, but the brothers hated him. If you have a family that has disowned you or hates you, you are in good company with Joseph. The brothers hated him and could not speak to him in friendly terms. In the middle of this first robe come the first two dreams. Now, the first two dreams come to Joseph, but Joseph doesn't understand them because your calling, the robe of your calling, at the beginning, you won't know what it is. Other people will tell you what it is. So, check this out. Verse 6. He said to them, "Please listen to this dream which I have had. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaves rose up, and I stood erect, and behold, your sheaves gathered and bowed down to my sheaves." Now, in this time in your life, you have not yet been given the spiritual gifts you will need to do your calling. So Joseph does not know how to interpret dreams. Yes. Everybody else in his family seems to know how to interpret dreams because they will interpret it for him. Verse 8. His brother said to him, "Are you actually going to reign over us? Are you really going to rule over us?" So they hated him even more. Then he had a second dream. And you remember the moon and the stars, and his father got involved with this dream. Verse 10. He related it to his father and to his brothers, and his father rebuked him. If you are being rebuked by the dreams and that God is putting in your belly, this is what happened to him. His father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have? Shall I and your mother and your brothers actually come to bow ourselves down before you to the ground?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the things in his mind because he said, "What's going on here with Joseph?" Now, don't forget, this is the first robe. We're going to see three robes in the life of Joseph and in our lives. This is a robe of your calling. This is what you were given from your mother's womb. So one day, his brothers went to the pasture their father's flock in Shechem. Now, tomorrow we're going to do another story, which is the Samaritan woman story. We're going to also do it from biblical studies perspective, which is fascinating to study the Bible this way because we find all. Um, but the geography is very important. If you look at Shechem in a map, you will see that Shechem and Sychar, where the well of the Samaritan woman is, and Dothan, where he will go next, are all within a few miles. So he will be sold in Dothan. Now, does anybody of you remember what the Samaritan woman said to Jesus? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave his well to who? To who? His son. Did you know that the very land where Joseph was sold was given to him at the end of Genesis as an inheritance? And he owned the land where he was sold. This is such an important point for me because sometimes we don't understand why God allows certain things in our lives, and our lives come full circle, and we say, "Oh, that's why He allowed this." Joseph became the owner of the land where he was sold into slavery. Most of the full circles in our lives, we will understand them in heaven, not here on earth. But every once in a while, you get a full circle on earth. The other day, that happened to me. You know, when I was 12 years old, my dad was sent to Andrews to do a master's degree. I was only 12 years old, and I was a popular girl in Argentina. You know, I had friends and all of that. And I came to the United States, and I couldn't speak English. And I used clothing that was used from Dorcas. You know, do you have Dorcas here too? You have a better one than Dorcas? Everybody's pointing at you. So I didn't have any clothing for snow because in Michigan it snowed a lot. And so we were to our knees on snow. And I cried every day wondering why God would send me to a place where I didn't have friends and all this kind of stuff. Well, there was no way I could imagine. There was no way because we went back to Argentina. There was no way I could imagine that God had a plan for me in the future to work in media. Picked up the language that year. That's the year I picked up the language, when I was 12 years old. And even though I have an accent and all of that, you can still understand me, which you wouldn't if I came much older, that I did later in the United States. So the other day I went to teach a class in Andrews. I go to Andrews very often. And this is 40 years later, because I'm 53 years old now. And I went to Andrews, and I could not believe the full circle because there was no way I could have imagined back then when I was crying what God had planned for the future. There was no way you can imagine because God is one that wants to do for you greater than you ask or imagine. And I used to say to God, I have a very good imagination. I don't know how you're going to top that. And guess what? He did. So I went to visit our apartment. And I stood in front of the Beechwood Apartments where I used to live when I was 12. And I started crying. I could not believe it. You know that Joseph ended up owning, given to him as an inheritance, the very land where he was sold into slavery. That's why when the Samaritan woman says, "Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave this wealth to his son Joseph?" Sychar and Shechem and Dothan are all in the same area. God will give your life circle. A lot of things you'll understand. Once you don't understand, you'll understand. And so it came about, verse 23, it came about when Joseph reached his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his robe, the very color robe that was on him, and they sold him. You know that? They sold him. And verse 31 is very important. I need you to underline the last sentence. verse 31 in your Bible, or highlight it if you're using an iPhone or something like that. They took Joseph's tunic and slaughtered a male goat and dipped the tunic in blood. It's a very important sentence here in Genesis that we will find later again in the Bible. They took Joseph's tunic and slaughtered a male goat and dipped the tunic in the blood and brought it to to Jacob. And can you believe Jacob was the deceiver? Now his son sees the deceiver. You know why it's important? Because whatever currency you use at home with your children, they will give you later. So here's the deceiver being deceived by his children. Now, in this stage, other people will tell you what you're calling it. That's why the brothers were saying, "What? Are you going to rule over us? Are you going to? Who told you that?" You know, it's very important that you understand that people will come to you in this stage and say, "You know, when you sing, it touches my soul. There's something about your voice." Or when you write poetry, it touches me. Or when you preach, I feel the Holy Spirit. And you're like, no, no. I mean, no, don't tell me that because other people say, no, I want to come to you for counseling because when you give me words of exhortation, I feel so encouraged. So other people are telling you what your calling is in this stage. You don't yet understand. God is orchestrating your calling. So he sold into slavery. I can imagine Joseph say, well, here goes all my dreams. There's a big detour. I'm going to Egypt. I'm never going to see my family again. You can get discouraged in this particular stage when you don't understand why you're in this world or why God brought you to Taiwan or why you were born in Taiwan or why. You can ask many whys if you want to. But I want to tell you there is a purpose for your life for you to be here right now. So he sold slavery. And this would be a very sad stage in our lives if we can believe God was leading our lives. And so, verse 36 gives us detail. Chapter 37, verse 36. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold him in Egypt. Now, look how much detail will be given. He, they sold him in Egypt to who? Potiphar. And just in case you don't know who Potiphar is, the next sentence tells you. Who is it? Pharaoh's officer. And in case you don't know what that means, he will tell you what kind of office he had. He was the captain of the bodyguard. All of this is very important for what is coming up because God didn't get lost. His GPS didn't stop working. He didn't end up in any house. He ended up in the house he needed to end up for whatever the next stage of his calling. He ended up in Potiphar's house, who happened to be an officer of Pharaoh, or not just any officer, the captain of the bodyguard, the whole guard. And you will see why that is important in a moment. Now, I wish I could tell you that you can go from the robe of your calling to the robe of your investiture, where you get to do your calling fully without going through this code. But I can't. Because everybody that will do God's will and the purpose that God had in his life will have to go through the middle one, which is a robe of training. And the robe of training is always a robe of suffering. Suffering has a way of stripping you from all your security in whatever you trusted in will be taken away from you in road. See, if you are really going to do mighty things for God, He has to teach you that you don't have what it takes, that He will give you what it takes. So He will allow you to be stripped, to be broken, This is where the caterpillar becomes a butterfly. And the caterpillar dies, and the butterfly is born. And I am always amazed that the cocoon is the tomb of the caterpillar, but is the womb of the butterfly. The same place is a tomb and is a womb, because the caterpillar dies and the butterfly is born. So in this stage, you will be given two things. You will be given training and abilities, and you will also be given spiritual gifts that are not yours, that you cannot go to school for. So in this stage, you will get experience, you will go to school, you will 20 years work in the same job. I don't know what the situation is with you, but you also will be given spiritual gifts, things that you cannot go to school for, things that are only spiritual, that God says, okay, this person is broken enough that now I can bless them with a spiritual gift to do what they were designed. So this stage of the life starts will be another role. You will see that in chapter 39, verse 2 is now in Potiphar's house, and I like the way that verse 2 starts. The Lord was with Joseph. And you're like, what? If God was with Joseph, how come he's a slave? Oh, says God, wait, I'm training him something much greater. I have called this particular picture that we're seeing today is present with us. You know, Emmanuel, God with us. We have studied His assurance and His faithfulness and Jesus' victory. And this morning we studied Jesus' provision, His love, as well as Jesus' presence. God was with Joseph. God is with you right now, in this place, in the middle of this problem, whatever it may be. So the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a slave. Oh, says God, wait, I'm orchestrating his life. So his master saw that God was with him and said, hey, you are going to be the overseer. And I love that word because right now Joseph will be trained as an overseer. Every job he has from now on will be an overseer. He will be the overseer in Potiphar's house, and he will be overseer of the jail, and then he will be overseer in Egypt. But of course, he doesn't know that, because you never know ahead of time what God has planned. But you have to trust that He's orchestrating, because His GPS is not broken. So, verse 4, Joseph found favor in his sight and became his personal servant, and he made him an overseer or a manager, depending what your version says, over his house and all that he owned. He put him in charge, and this slave, all of a sudden, is getting training on something. So maybe you cook very well and you say, maybe I should start a bakery, but I have no money. How in the world I'm going to start this? And don't think of your ability. Just give your availability. God has no lack of resources. You think that if He can rain manna from heaven, He cannot give you what you need to do your calling? He doesn't need your ability. He needs your availability. He will give you everything you need for the. He does miracles. He doesn't have lack of money or lack of cows or lack of bread. He has no lack of anything. So here, Joseph found favor in his sight and became his personal servant. And he made him an overseer of his whole house. And he said, you are in charge of my whole house except my wife. And the wife raised her hand and said, I want to be part of what Joseph oversees. So the wife kept trying to get Joseph, as you know. And Joseph was wearing the robe of the overseer. Only Joseph wore this robe, as you can see in a moment, because it will become the evidence. Because nobody else for the robe of the overseer. So one day, and you will see because the word will be repeated so many times in the next 5 verses. 11, verse 11, chapter 39, verse 11. It happened one day that he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the household was there inside. She caught him by his robe, or garment, or tunic, whatever your version says. She caught him by his robe, which everybody knew was only Joseph because Joseph was wearing the robe of the overseer, saying, "Lie with me, sleep with me." And he left his robe in her hand and fled and went outside. Poor Joseph, every time he gets a new robe, somebody takes it from him. You know, you're like, okay, maybe this is it. Maybe I'm here. Maybe this is my calling. All of a sudden, it slips from you again. You're like, did I miss it? Don't forget that God is taking steps through steps in a ladder. God's GPS is not broken. So he gets stripped from, and look how many times the word robe is used. Verse 12. She caught him by his garment or robe, saying, "Lie with me." And he left his robe in her hand and fled and went outside. When she saw that he had left his robe, I mean, you can count how many times we get the word robe or garment or tunic in her hand and fled outside. She called to the men, etc., etc. You know the story. Verse 15. When he heard that I raised my voice and screamed, he left his robe beside me and fled and went outside. And all this thing happened because he had a robe that nobody else had. And we know it's Joseph and he's being stripped. Where does he end up? He ends up in jail. What job is he given in jail? Okay. We're like, we didn't hear before. God, in this state, God will use a training and spiritual gift. So he's overseeing the jail and two dreams come. Because every stage in Joseph's life has two dreams. Two signs that two dreams come to us people. So he's overseeing, and one day, verse 4, chapter 4, the captain of the bodyguard put Joseph in charge. He's always in charge. He doesn't know why. He ends up in charge. He took care of them. Then the cupbearer and the baker, king of the who were confined in jail, both had a dream. Now God sends dreams. Joseph is looking, overseeing, but he's a slave. Do you understand? I mean, he's not in a place of woohoo. He's a slave. But God is. So he sees the cupbearer and the baker wondering what's going on, and then he says, "What's going on?" He says, "We both had dreams the same night," and they explain the dream. And Joseph says, "Okay, why don't you tell me the dreams?" And this is the first time we have in which Joseph not only has abilities and experience now, but he also gets a spiritual gift. And he gets the spiritual gift of interpretation. This is not supposed to be spiritual. When you get a spiritual gift, it's a gift from God for you to edify the kingdom. And so they tell verse 8. They said to him, I mean chapter 40, verse 8, they said to him, "We have had a dream and there's no one to interpret it." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell it to me, please." And for the first time, Joseph will interpret the dreams and he will interpret them accurately. One of them will go back to Pharaoh in 3 days, the other one will be hung in 3 days. Now, Joseph is not in denial like many of us are. Say, "No, everything is great. We love it, and we're suffering, and we're not telling anybody." Joseph keeps saying, "Please talk to somebody. Get me out of here because I didn't do anything wrong. I don't understand why God put me here." See, I love how real the Bible is. I don't like when Christians are not real. The Bible is real. And Joseph is like, "I don't know why I'm in this jail. I don't understand." It's okay to say that. But trust that God is behind it with a plan that you have no idea, neither have you imagined. So I like this. He says to the cupbearer, "You're going to back to Pharaoh. Please talk to Pharaoh. Get me out of here." I love that. Verse 14 of chapter 40. This is Joseph talking to the cupbearer. Verse 14. "Keep me in mind when it goes well with you. Please do me a kindness by mentioning me to Pharaoh and get me out of this house. For I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing that they should have put me in this dungeon." And I want to tell you something interesting from the Hebrew. The word dungeon is the word pit, which is the same word that was used when his brothers put him in a pit. So this is the second pit for Joseph. The first pit, the first dungeon, the first same word was when his brothers put him in a pit. They stripped him and sold him. Now they stripped him again and they put him in another pit. How many pits can we go through until we give up? I like that. She's using me. How many times you get your hands up and say, "What's going on?" I can tell you, my divorce was my pit. Because I was like, this doesn't happen to people like me. I thought I did everything God wanted me to do. What's going on? Little did I know what He had in store for God. I know that I'm in an oven, and I know that you are the potter, and I am the clay. But I've been in the oven a little too long. Don't you think I'm toasting here? I said those very words to God many, many times. I like that this song was chosen. I am the clay, you are the potter, and we all love to sing the song. But the day that the potter starts working with the clay and puts it in the oven, he gets hot. And we're like, did you forget me in the oven? Or are you making a vessel that you're actually planning to use? Because I'm toasting. So this would be a very sad stage in life because it feels like you're dying. Because you're being stripped of everything you know and hold dear. But the caterpillar is dying. But the butterfly is being born. Very soon you're going to see the colors of your wings that you didn't even imagine. So this would be a very difficult stage in our life. If it wasn't for one verse, the Bible decides to tell you. Chapter 39, verse 20. I love that. And you're going to say, why? It doesn't say anything special. Well, I'm going to tell you why. Chapter 39, verse 20 says that when Joseph went to jail, he went to a special jail. Joseph's master took him and put him in jail, but it was the jail where the king's prisoners were confined. It was the royal jail. Now I want to know, why do you think Joseph ended up in the king's jail instead of the regular jail? Why you? Because his master was in charge of the jail, because he was the officer of Pharaoh and he was the captain of the bodyguard. So when Potiphar put him in jail, he didn't say, okay, what jail can I put him? No, he put it in the king's jail because he worked for the king. So God had planned everything ahead of time so that when Joseph was sold into slavery, he wouldn't be sold to just anybody. He would be sold to Potiphar, so that when he did go to jail, he ended up in the jail of the king, where the two were going to be there, and the cupbearer would have the dream, and then the cupbearer eventually would talk to Pharaoh. All of it had been orchestrated. And you thought the rent check was not in. You don't think that God knows money for. You don't think God knows that you're waiting for a husband? Or you're wanting to have a child? God knows everything. But He has a plan. He has a plan. We don't know the plan, but He knows the plan. And He's just waiting for you to say, okay, Lord, whatever your plan is, I'll accept it, even if I don't understand it, because you have made me for a purpose from my mother's womb. I am struck by this, that he ended up in the royal jail, not just any jail. Well, because he worked for Potiphar. Now, I wish I could tell you that the cupbearer went running to Pharaoh and said, "There is this guy, Joseph, in jail. He's fantastic. You have to call him in." But the chapter ends in a different note. Verse 23, chapter 40, verse 23. The chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph. That's what happened. And I would love to tell you that chapter 41 says it happened at the end of 2 weeks, or it happened at the end of 2 months, but it says it happened at the end of 2 full years. 2 full years on top of all the years that you already been slave. 2 more years. Now I have to confess something. As I'm getting older and older and older, I think at this point I have submitted to God's will because so many things have happened to me that at one point you say, okay, whatever, I'm do whatever. But God's timing is what has given me the hardest time of my life. Why now? Why this now? And I look at the characters in the Bible, and they all struggle with God's timing. He could have waited one more year for Mary to get pregnant with Jesus so that people wouldn't have talked in the town because they knew she was not sleeping with Joseph. No, but he did it then so everybody would know that Jesus was born of a virgin, but this gave Mary a lot of trouble. And he gave Joseph a lot of trouble. Sarah, you're going to have a son. Okay. 50 years old, 60 years old, 70 years old, 80 years old. Hagar, come over here. Nothing's happening. 90 years old. A child. But this is no time to have a child. Is anybody 90 years old? No? No? Well, if you were 90 years old and I told you today you were pregnant, you would laugh. And you know what Sarah did? She laughed. That's why Isaac is laughter. That's what it is, Isaac. She laughed. And Beth Moore, who is a Christian writer in the United States, she has a very funny comment on this. Sarah became the first woman to pay the pediatrician with the Social Security check. She was the first woman to pay the pediatrician with the Social Security. Of course, because people that are retired don't go to have their children seen by a doctor because when you're retired, you no longer have babies. Well, that's what God's clock that never, 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 never matches your watch. So we have to get that one out of the way so that we don't keep waiting or asking why now, why then, tomorrow, whatever. He has his own timing, and his timing is perfect. And so, chapter 41 says, it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had two dreams. And the dreams, the story since you're a kid. In the first dream, had to do with 7 cows that were fat, and then other 7 cows that were very thin. They ate the fat cows, and then he got a second one. Verse 6, behold, 7 ears, thin cords like wings, sprouted up after them, and the ears of grain ate the fat ears of grain. And after 2 years, the cupbearer remembered this. But the two dreams were sent by God, which is unbelievable to me because I have visited Egypt and I have seen how many strange gods they had. That God was communicating with Pharaoh. Don't ever think that because somebody's way out there, God doesn't communicate. God is after everybody. Absolutely. And so, cupbearer remembered, verse 14, actually this is verse 12, chapter 41, verse 12. A Hebrew youth was with us there in the jail, a servant of the captain of the bodyguard. There you have it again. And we related them, the dreams, to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. So each one of us interpreted according to his own dream. And just as he interpreted for us, so it happened. He restored me in the office, but he had him. And Pharaoh said, bring that boy to me. And I love verse 14. Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph, and they hurriedly brought him out of the pit. Same word. The pit was it with the brothers, the pit was the jail, now they bring him out of the pit. Because there will come a time in your life that will the pit is not permanent. It's a training. See, you might tell me, you don't know where I am. You don't know what my marriage I look like, or my career, or my life, or whatever. I'm like in jail, but I'm going to tell you it's a royal jail. It's the ones that God has planned for you so you can get trained for what's coming. Nobody likes the jail, but you're being trained and because God has made. So they brought him out and look at the details. I love details in verses. When he had shaved, I love it because you almost see Joseph so depressed that he's not even shaving himself anymore. When he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he was brought to Pharaoh. And the last stage before he gets the robe of investiture comes to Joseph. So remember, each robe has two wings. The robe of your calling has two dreams here in Joseph's story. The robe of training has two dreams. Now we're on the two dreams of the third code. He's about to get the investiture. He's about to get what he was made for. He's about to rule the greatest power that ever existed on this earth. And God is about to use Joseph to preserve the race of the Jews through which the Messiah is to come. Many, many times in the Bible, the devil will try to exterminate the race of the Jews, and God will have one person, an ordinary little person, that he will use to, in his power, to allow the race to continue. Here's Joseph, in other times it's Moses, in other times it's Esther. God has somebody, and you are here today for a one. And so, last temptation comes up. You know, you are gifted. It's so easy to start believing that you are gifted. So Pharaoh says to Joseph, I have had a dream, no one could interpret it, and I have heard that it was said about you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. I mean, what a temptation. What a temptation. I work in media and I've seen people go bad in media because they started believing that they were great people because they're in media. I've seen singers that God can no longer use because they believe they're great singers. You know, it's like if you say, hey, your sermons have touched me so much. You're such a great preacher. And I go, yeah, I'm such a great preacher. I don't know why you didn't invite me before. Can you imagine if I asked? Can you imagine if I believed that I was a great preacher? Every morning I kneel down to God and I say, I have nothing to say. Please bring your spirit in a powerful way that will take over this place, make me visible. Because I know that God has made donkeys to speak for him. In the time of Balaam, he had a donkey, and the donkey spoke. And this weekend, I was the donkey for the weekend. And God was going to speak to the donkey. But not for one moment feel that you own a gift. Oh, I'm such a great singer, I'm such a great baker, I'm such a great preacher, I'm such a great writer. No, you are given gifts for the edifying of the church, and you don't even know how it happens. You just see the Holy Spirit come, and you are humbled every time He uses a donkey like yourself. So Joseph does not say, oh, yeah, I can interpret dreams. I'm so good at interpreting dreams. I don't know why you didn't call me to your court before. No, Joseph answers and says something different. Joseph answered to Pharaoh, saying, oh, no, it is not in me. No, you have heard wrong. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. It's not. I'm not the one who interprets dreams, says Joseph. God interprets dreams. God gives you the ability to bake healthy cookies, and everybody says, "You, I feel so much better when I eat the cookies you bake." Or when you sing, "I am touched." Well, God is working through wounded vessels, vessels of clay that have been given the treasure of the gospel. Joseph says, "No, it's not in me. God will be the one who will do it." And God gives the interpretation of the dream. And then Pharaoh says, "What am I going to do?" Verse 38, now Pharaoh knows that God is the one behind everything. Pharaoh, the one that's supposed to be the God of Egypt, now realizes that Joseph has something that he does not have. Verse 38, then Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find a man like this in whom is a divine spirit?" Now he's giving glory to God. Remember what Jesus said? Whenever you do good works, make sure that people give glory to God, not to you. Because there's nothing in you to give glory. There's nothing in me to give glory. All the glory goes for God. And so, is there any man like this in whom is a divine spirit? And Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God, now Pharaoh got it, since God has informed you of all of this, that's the interpretation that you know that Joseph gave, there is no one so discerning and wise as you are. So you are wise and discerning because God is giving you. And so Pharaoh said to Joseph, verse 41, I have set you as an overseer of all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took his signet and put it in his hand and put it on Joseph's hand and clothed him with a robe. He clothed him with a robe of fine 42 and put the gold necklace around his neck. And Joseph became the overseer, that which he had been born for, to preserve the Jewish ways which the Messiah was to come. A little boy sold by his brothers, coming from a dysfunctional family, in a pit, stripped by all his different tunics and garments and robes, used by God to save a race to which the Messiah was to come. God has a great purpose for you. And let me tell you, there's nothing like doing what God has. Nothing compares to it. No relationship, no hardship, no trial. There's nothing in this world that can compare to doing the purpose that God has for you. You know, I travel sometimes 3 or 4 times a week on a plane, and my legs get swollen, and I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to take the planes, and there's a song in your heart because you know you're doing that which you were put on this earth to do. But if you told me that 20 years ago in the middle of the divorce, trying to figure out why God allowed this in my life, and I mean, I would tell you, I have no idea. God's GPS is broken. But God's GPS was not broken because God will take all things for the good of this. Joseph, like all the other characters in the Bible that are part of the covenant, are what we call typological of Christ, which means that they are pointing to Christ in one way or another, like everything else in the Bible. So Abraham, Joseph, Moses, David, all of them are pointing to Christ, and Joseph is no exception. You know that robes are very important in the Bible because they tell us the stage that somebody's in, and you will go through these stages for sure. Me too. Sometimes 3 or 4 times a year or in a lifetime. I don't know your stages. Sometimes the middle stage lasts for 15 years, and you're like, what's going on? There is a sentence from the story of Joseph that is used in the book of Revelation to tell us what Jesus will be wearing on the second coming. So let's go to chapter 19 of Revelation. Remember, I asked you to highlight verse 31 of chapter 37, that there was a tunic dipped in blood. Chapter 19, verse 11 is the second coming of Christ that we studied this morning. But most people don't know that the sentence used here comes from the story of Moses, of Joseph. Verse 11, I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on it is faithful and in righteousness to judge the wages of the poor. Verse 13, he is clothed with, here comes a robe dipped in blood. This is the exact sentence that comes from the story of Joseph. Because we get so many symbols. Uh, Joseph's tunic was dipped in the blood of a little animal. But Jesus' tunic is dipped in his own blood to remind us of the price that he paid so that you wouldn't be needy of blood. And so you might say, so how do we do this? How do we live our lives waiting for God to navigate and orchestrate? What if you are in the first row that you're like, I don't know what God's calling for me? People say I can do this, but I'm not sure. Or maybe you're in the middle. Statistics tell me that at least 50% of you today are in the middle row of training and suffering and wondering and asking, why am I in a pit? Why am I in the royal jail? Or maybe you are doing, maybe you have a spring in your step and your heart is singing a song every day, and you know that you have no gift in you, that God somehow shows up every time you do a thing, and you're like amazed and humbled that He would use donkeys like yourself. So how do you navigate life? And how do you not lose the assurance of your salvation, no matter what stage you're in? Well, actually, it's quite simple. If you understood that you're only saved by grace and that God is with you, whether you're in Potiphar's house or in the royal jail or in Pharaoh's house or in the pit, then you learn this. And I want you to remember this. Whether you are in the robe of your calling, the robe of your training, the robe of your destiny, you're covered by the blood of God. You never lose this, no matter what stage you're in. So you can enjoy the fact that you have faith and that God orchestrates your life, that you won't understand everything, but that one thing is you have a Redeemer who has purchased his life. That's all. That's all you need to know. Everything else, he will bless. So trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Acknowledge him in all your ways, and he will bless. I'm not going to show you the last video. We're going to pray. Dear Father, thank you because you have saved us, because you have purchased us with your blood. Tonight, you have explained that you're with us in every stage. Whether it's the one that we are wondering and don't fully understand it, or it's the one that we're in pain and some suffering, and we feel like we're dying, and the caterpillar is dying, and it's the tomb of the caterpillar, but it's the womb of the butterfly. Or maybe we are in the middle of what we think is the final calling, and all of a sudden we start all over again. Thank you because every stage we have one thing. Emmanuel, God with. May we never be spiritual, and may we trust you with the time that you put in our hearts to feel that our lives will be called your glory.